This is the Breakfast Leadership Podcast. Boundaries or burnout, you make the choice. Here's your host, Michael Levitt. Welcome again to the Breakfast Leadership Podcast. And today I've got Stephen Morse from the Mth Degree, and that's M as in Michael. And Stephen's going to tell us about his organization. They specialize in evolving brands with purpose, promise, and profit. So Stephen, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here.
So tell me about the Mth Degree. I mean, when I saw the name, I'm like, okay, this is definitely a different organization. I need to know more about it. So
yeah,
the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. So most people know the mathematical term of nth degree and NTH, which means without limits. And so we kind of stole or borrowed that mathematical term and put an M in front of it. And the way we look at what we do is marketing without limits. And Peter Drucker, the famous business consulting guru from the 1960s, said that there's really only two functions within any organization. One of which is innovation and the other which is marketing. And so marketing, from my perspective, is really telling the world about what you do and talking, hopefully, to the world that you're communicating to in a manner that is impactful to them and how it makes a difference in their lives. So really what we do at the Mth Degree is we work with organizations at their apex of change. And so a lot of organizations go through big, significant changes at some point, and some of those are internal forces, some are external forces. Those internal forces might be, an acquisition or a new CEO or a new product launch. External forces might be things like market conditions changing or a new competitor comes into the space. Or organizations sometimes just want to get very serious about the impact they're making on the lives of their customers. And we work with the leaders of those organizations to help mine their most deeply held beliefs, capture them into what we call a matrix or a belief system matrix, and infuse that matrix within the culture, and then ultimately express it to the outside world. So it's a lot of work that has to do with brand evolution, but it's really business evolution at its heart.
Yeah, it's incredible, and especially the matrix work, because I know a lot of times, and we've seen other systems in the past that kind of gloss over that, where they try to get the theme or the culture of an organization, and they'll use a lot of what I like to call square peg and round hole exercises, and it really doesn't get to the bottom of what the belief system and the leadership style and mandate of the executives are and the organization, and making sure that's in alignment. Because we see in corporate America and not-for-profit world as well, where there's a mismatch, where you have an executive team that are going down a certain path, and the team that they have doesn't seem to either want to go down that way, or they don't really understand because the communication hasn't been clear and there hasn't been a way to kind of group everyone together to get a better understanding of what that organization is truly about and what they're trying to accomplish, and using a very cheap term, get everybody on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting. You use the square peg in the round hole, or really this the kind of like the old paradigm of leadership, which was the more command and control system of leadership, which, as we all know, took the form of the leadership decided, here's what we're going to do, and then everybody else sort of followed suit or didn't. They either stayed or left. And it was, kind of fear-based. It was, sort of, carrot and stick mindset. And it's been proven over and over again that really doesn't work in cultural life or in organizational life. And so a lot of the work that I do has to do with really touching into the human nature and the core element of our need to belong as a human species. We're sort of raised in this world. We're brought up with a very deep-seated need for not just connection, but for collaboration. Darwin even talks about it in most of his writings, and that, you know, we are successful as a species because of our ability to both collaborate and adapt. And if we think about that in cultural terms, and we think about the people who work for organizations and contribute not just their time and energy, but ideally their passion, they raise their hand and they say, I want to belong or contribute to something that's larger than myself. So if an organization can bring along as many people as possible, or a full load of organizational staff that says, you know what, I fully agree with what this organization is trying to do. It's bigger than myself, and I have the opportunity to contribute my own personal genius or my skill set into that organization. Then you have an organization that is both thriving, it's curious, it's creative, and it's working based on a purpose-oriented mindset versus a command and control or fear-oriented mindset.
In the work that you've done, and I'm sure you've encountered this because I've seen it in my stuff too, where you go into an organization and you've got multiple generations. So you've got the people that are identified as the baby boomers, and then Generation X, and then our frequently picked on millennial population, which I think is improper, because they're a generation that, at least from my observation, appears to want to make a huge contribution, but not make it their 24/7 existence. I'm curious to see, you know, what are some of the things that you've seen when you've been working with these organizations?
Yeah, you know, it's so interesting that you, bless you, that you bring that up. You know, I agree. I think millennials have been unfairly characterized as sort of slackers and sort of half in what they do. And, you know, as a father of two young men who are of the millennial generation, I can attest that they in particular, and many of the young people that I've worked with over the years, not just in my organization, but in other organizations, they actually care very deeply. The way they express themselves is very different. And, you know, it's interesting is, you know, I'm in my 50s now. And as you look back over time, there's not been a younger generation that's ever been fairly characterized. So you go back into the 1960s, for instance, and we think about the folks who are now baby boomers and the way that they were looked upon by the older generation and the change that they were making back in the 1960s and you know, in North America, well, really, and even in Europe and things like that. They were always thought to be like, how are these people ever going to rule the world or be in charge, kind of thing. But my experience has been millennials actually care very deeply. And while their work isn't always their life, they're very purpose driven. In fact, for the most part, I have seen that they want to raise their hand and contribute very heavily into something that makes a difference in the world. And once you get that particular type of energy behind them, or they understand what that opportunity is in their world, I've seen that they can be massive contributors on every level of the organization. And some of the challenges that we see is how the different generations actually see one another and they get along. Because, you know, if you were to ask a millennial how do they feel about a baby boomer, they would say that they're out of touch and they're you know, not digital natives. They don't understand technology and things like that, which is also an unfair characterization.
Yeah, I've seen it myself, and my take on that particular generation is they are extremely engaged. They are, and they want to break down the silos that previous generations have established. You know, they want more information because they want to make the best informed decisions that they can, and they want access to information that sometimes may not be easily available because of either privacy, HR files, you name it. They want to understand. They have this strong desire to learn. And It's a resource that every organization definitely needs to encourage and nurture and figure out ways to allow every generation to operate at their absolute best, because when you do that, then you have an absolutely stellar organization that's going to do incredible things. So as far as the clients you work with, describe your ideal client. Who do you like working with? And without giving hints on the companies you don't like working with, but who are some of your ideal clients? The avatar. What do they look like? What makes it easy to work with them?
Yeah, as I talked about in the beginning, they're typically facing either an actual crisis or something that would borderline a crisis, and they realize that the way that they've been doing business perhaps is not necessarily working for them, and that the way that they want to do business is to capture a deeply held belief system and put that to work within their organization. So, the work that I do is fairly industry agnostic. I've worked with clients that range from as large as Samsung and as small as a local nonprofit here in San Diego. And the ideal client is really willing to make that change and foster a big evolution within their organization. And they're wanting to do that on multiple levels. They first identify that they have a particular challenge, or there's a force that's really creating the change. They're as an organization committed. So it's not like just the leadership is talking, but they've gotten buy-in at really every level across the organization to make the evolution work take root. They're willing to do it both from a cultural side, and they're willing to change their perception or the brand experience from the customer side. And they're also quite clear that they're willing to put the resources, both time, energy, focus, and money behind it in order to make the leap, because they understand they've probably done some research on what a purpose-driven organization can actually accomplish, and they have some understanding of what that can do for the future of the organization.
That's great. And if you were to give one piece of advice for organizations to help prevent them, not to eliminate your job, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but what kind of advice would you give to organizations that they could do to help kind of prevent or mitigate coming into an absolute crisis situation? Things are happening, the external forces can happen and they may still need to address certain things, but is there one piece of advice you could give to an organization that they could really do to help mitigate or at least lessen the impact of some of the challenges that you see with your clients?
Yeah, it's interesting. This may sound weird, but having a very strong purpose and working from that purpose within your organization can mitigate the out of control chaos that exterior forces can play on an organization, because really what it does is it acts as both a compass and a rudder. And so no organization, no individual even can control what happens to them. But what we can control is how we respond to those things that do happen. And when an organization works with a very strong center or a very strong purpose, they better make decisions, or they make better decisions, actually both are true, in dealing with a crisis scenario. So they keep an eye on the big picture, they keep an eye on the long term, and because they're holding their own center, they're more able to react and respond in the way that works best for their organization. So there's a whole difference in the way we would as if both individuals and organizations respond to a crisis versus react to a crisis. And the difference there is, when we're in a crisis and we simply react to it, it tends to be a temporary solution, versus a response is a much more strategic, holistic, and wholehearted solution that comes from the center of the organization and thinks about what's best for the future of the organization versus dealing with just the issue at hand.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Now, last question before I'll let you share anything else you'd like to share. 5 years from now, this is not the 5-year plan question. I'm not.
Mhm.
No, I'm not giving you that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
we remember those 5 years. I don't even know where I'm going to be in 5 days, much less 5 years. Uh, 5-year question. Where do you see the Mth degree? What's your dreams and aspirations, and what's the goal for the organization in 2023, if my math is correct?
Wow. Yeah. 2023. Wow. It's
I know.
so
Wow.
interesting. You say like 5 years, and I think, well, okay, 5 years, that's really hard to imagine. But then you start putting dates to it, and they sound so futuristic, right?
Yeah. They do.
So, part of my driving purpose is really to help organizations to discover and thrive based on their own purpose. And I just love what I do. And so I just want to keep doing more of it. And there's no shortage of organizations out there that need this kind of work and need this kind of thinking. I think in 5 years, I'm working on a book right now that's called The Evolve Brand. Within a year, hopefully that book is out and impacting the world in a very mindful and a very purpose-driven and a very serious way. And hopefully beginning to evangelize the manifesto within that mindset of the Evolve brand, which is really part and parcel to everything that we're talking here today. And then I want to see more and more organizations live and work from their own purpose. And I see this happening a great deal, especially in North America, United States, Canada, a little bit out and through Europe, but there's other parts of the world that this hasn't really caught on. So in 5 years from now, I'd love to see this work being done in other parts of the world, and especially in Asia and other more evolving cultures.
That's some awesome work, and I'm confident you're going to get there and probably exceed your expectations, because when organizations find their purpose, that's when they are truly serving their clients and their customers and the greater good. So thank you so much for that, and thank you for your time today. How can our audience members find you and find out more about the Mth degree?
Yeah, and thanks so much for holding the space and for the conversation today. And I hope this was valuable both to you and to your audience. The best way to get up with me or find out more about Mth Degree is through our website, which is themthdegree.com. And it's got a lot of tools, and I do a lot of writing, thought leadership, putting that out into the world, writing for other publications as well. And then I also do a lot of talking, public speaking, and workshops on curiosity and how curiosity can evolve into innovation within cultures. And there's a free download that I've posted up on our website. If people go to themthdegree.com/curiosity, they can download the free curiosity toolkit right there.
Awesome. And audience, we will definitely have all of those links in the show notes, and I highly encourage you to go check it out, because I think even as an individual, you follow some of these techniques that Stephen has discussed today, it's going to make you a better person. You're going to be a better employee for your organization, or a better entrepreneur, and you'll make a gigantic impact in this world. So, Stephen, once again, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you being on the show and sharing your vision, and nothing but awesome success in your future.
A million thanks, Michael. Really appreciate what you're doing out there and love your show. And it's been an honor to be on it.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. And until next time, everybody, be well. Hey, it's Michael again. Thank you for listening to the podcast. I really appreciate it. If you're like many people, you're dealing with some significant stress and possibly approaching burnout. I know how you feel. In 2009, my burnout led to a year of worst-case scenarios. I do not want that to happen to you. If you go to breakfastleadership.com, you can register for a free webinar on burnout prevention, as well as get a free checklist to have successful mornings. Start off each day the right way. Again, that's at breakfastleadership.com. Also, since you are a loyal podcast listener, I'm asking you to like, rate, and review my podcast on iTunes. I look at all the reviews and appreciate your comments, and it helps other potential listeners discover the content I have on the show. I appreciate you, and thanks again for listening.